the news is official. I believe it was late Thursday evening or Wednesday evening that the Athletic Steph Young and Meg Linehan reporting that Becky Sauerbrunn was not going to be available for the World Cup. Later confirmation from Becky Sauerbrunn that yes, she in fact will not be available and miss out on this upcoming World Cup. She released a statement essentially confirming the breaking news, and it felt like it was a typical Becky Sauerbrunn statement. She started it off with how heartbroken she was, the sad news, but she kept it very honest and very real and said, like, that's sports for you and that's life, really. And of course, she went on to go ahead and close it out by trying to encourage her teammates, saying that she loved them, to take a minute to enjoy the moment, to appreciate everything that brought you here, every second of hard work and every bit of good luck, and to then get back out there and go win the whole effing thing. And yeah, it was, you know, you just read a statement like that, and it sort of makes it feel a little bit more real, right? You know, you get the initial reports, and of course it's good source reporting from credible journalists, and then you're like, oh no, and then you get the reaction from the player themselves, and then it just sort of all settles in. And there's been a lot of reaction to this, and I think that is the thing that has stuck out for me the most, Lori. I know as someone in the space, as media, it's like I also had to react to it. Wrote up response to Becky's absence. You can catch it on cbssports.com. But that was the thing that stood out for me, was just this sort of like collective reaction to this news, that we saw it from fans, general public. We're talking like casuals who will just probably tune in for the World Cup just because it's a massive event, you know, critics, media, everyone reacting to it in a way where it was just like, this absolutely sucks, this blows. But having you on today as our guest, I wanted to just ask you, like, A, your first initial reactions to that, and B, like what's the significance of that for the locker room as a former player?
Yeah. Well, my initial reaction was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Like, even though it's credible reporting, excellent, like as you mentioned, from Meg Linehan and Steph Yang, and then obviously Becky confirming it. It's just, yeah, it's devastating. And even though that Becky's saying it's part of sport, it's part of life, it doesn't make it any easier. And from a human aspect, right? Like all the work, this would have been Becky's fourth World Cup, and whether it's your first or your fourth, it's emotional time gearing up for it, and then to be taken away and doing all you can to get back and be ready, and having to say, okay, I can't be ready, I'm not going to be able to help my team. It doesn't make sense to take a spot if that's the case. And so, yeah, really just gutted and heartbroken for Becky. Was my first. Becky and I were longtime training partners. We didn't cross over at UVA, a bit older, but we trained together when we both lived in DC. So longtime friends, and yeah, it's a bummer on all aspects. Really, it is devastating, because this is a player that leads the back line, is a true leader, and on the field wants to help others. I mean, you get that whole sense, right? I think that's what everybody feels, is even just a letter, you're just like, that's just true.
Yeah.
Right? And then also just one of those players that is wonderful. She wants the best for everybody. She's still the player that's like, if I make the team. What do you mean if you make the team? You're a captain. This doesn't even make any sense. So yeah, just from a whole collective, you feel that pain, but you also know that Becky's going to be the one in the background cheering the team on, sending messages, making sure that the team feels her presence, and all those words that she says would be completely true, right? Feels this team can win. And two things that have stood out though leading up to this is Becky, when they played Ireland afterwards and they had her on, and she was like, I want the team to be brave. Let's go win, right? Let's be excited about winning. And I think that's what the team has to take away. And then also I think the words of Sam Ewis and Lynn Williams on Snacks, when like Becky is the players captain, like that, I hear that all the time in my head when I think about Becky, because is so true from those two players that would know so well, right? And you're like, she's the moral compass of, and that's what you feel. And it's just like you lose that, and it's such a profound person that you're missing.
I think that's that's like the highest compliment I think you could give a teammate, your team captain, in that sense. I think it was like Sam Ewis some months back or some years back who actually first said that, like, Becky's like my moral compass. And you have sort of heard and seen like other teammates and players like adopt that as well, like hearing Lynn say that on their episode of Snacks as well, like as they reacted to it. It's just because it's just like I guess a perfect sentiment in terms of what to feel around for the loss of this player. But I think it's very interesting, as I think we can also note the senior national team program and how it's built and the type of machine it is, and the way players, please correct me if I'm wrong, or the way players have typically honored each other in the past is by sort of taking all of that, having their moments with it, and then trying to move on.
Yes, certainly.
Essentially, you know, and I think we can already sort of see or feel that kind of coming out as well. I mean, I know sometime shortly, there will be a 23-player roster for that World Cup announced. And I think folks are already looking at that position and kind of honing in on the center back area about who's going to be there to kind of step up in those roles. And I mean, we're already hearing a lot about folks very excited about the possibility of Naomi Girma slotting into not only into this role positionally, but possibly even having a leadership role somewhere down the line in the future, which is, I think, it's a lot to put on a young player who might be going to their first World Cup. But all your wheels start turning into those areas and start thinking about that. So I don't know. I just sort of feel like, yes, there's all those things that come with losing, you know, such a big piece in your team captain, and maybe a bit of the morale in the locker room, but within the reporting as well, like sort of hearing how O'Hara might be in on this roster, and how maybe the plan is to sort of draw from other veteran players in terms of leadership. Folks were already asking, and they're like, well, who's going to be the captain? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'd love to see Crystal Dunn be given a shot. I think there's a lot of players in that locker room that could actually, you know, be relied upon for all of that type of leadership. Maybe that's what it's going to take. Maybe it's going to take a rotating cast of characters, right? To sort of try to lift everything up.
I agree. And I agree about the shot with Crystal Dunn. I think she deserves it. I fully expect, you know, without managing minutes, her to be on the field for a great deal of this World Cup, right? Regardless of where. And yeah, I do think it's going to take a leadership, especially when you're bringing in some new faces. That's been reported, as well as Savannah DeMello with her play in the league. If it is confirmed and announced, right? I mean, I believe she's going on that plane, so let's just state it as it is. But, you know, new players. So you have to have, I think, a collective, especially with the way the women's game is growing. And these tournaments are tough, regardless if like you think that there's some games that you know are winnable. It is about game to game, right? And so you need a collective group and the voice and some of the players that have been there to really kind of uplift that group and keep the focus on winning each game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you 100%. And we'll keep an eye on when the roster does eventually drop. You know, make sure you're all subscribed again, tune in, because we'll probably react to the roster when it does drop. But one piece we know for sure, unfortunately, Sauerbrunn will not be with the U.S. Women's National Team when they head off to Australia and New Zealand this summer.